I think the interesting thing about the Territorial Army in relationship to your statement there is the fact that we often saw that with regular officers and regular senior NCOs that came in their official capacity as senior personnel staff instructor or commanding officer, adjutant, whatever. Yeah. They would come with a very, in the early days, with a very arrogant attitude to the fact almost they'd been given a poor job. And didn't see it as a regular battalion, and therefore have the interaction on a day-to-day basis, and often came with sort of I will drive this train set very hard because I want to make it something which I've not been given, and therefore there was no realisation of what the TA person was about. You then had incredibly good commanding officers or RSMs, whatever, who actually picked up on it very quickly, the skill sets that were there. The understanding that these people could bring something to it, and I think that there's got to be a cross polarity there between the specials and the regular police force. I think the Territorial Army has altered dramatically over the last 10-15 years. The major problem that the Territorial Army has, of course, has been with the ability to deploy its capability and actually use that resource. And I think that the thing that the Army has done over where they were 20 years ago with their reserve force is that they've had a much greater thought on integration. Units are now not solely reserve units, they are linked in with regular counterparts. So you may have a unit which is a reserve unit in total, but it will actually be deployed with a regular division. Likewise, you may have a squadron which may actually be linked with a regular regiment as part of one of their working squadrons. So I think that side of it has brought a greater realisation and understanding of the assets that are available and the skill sets of these people. And it's also brought in a greater reliability on them, of course, because when they do want or when they are deployed, the volunteer knows now what he's going into. He has a relationship with the regular unit, and perhaps there isn't the same stigma or fear of taking up that deployment. The early makeup of the militia was, of course, a dual source, and quite often people reporting for militia would be carrying out bailiff roles, they may be carrying out policing roles, and indeed the early militia was part of a policing organisation anyway. I mentioned in the presentation about the yeomanry being used after the Napoleonic Wars through the 1820s to 30s for actually quelling civil unrest, because at that particular time the policing as was then couldn't contend with the civil unrest. And I guess my thought process along those lines what would have been the situation some weeks ago when we had the civil unrest in London and Birmingham, and Manchester, if we could have indeed beefed up the police, if you like, with an auxiliary force of reservist stroke full-time army. It's a question which I would have thought the authorities would or should be thinking about. I think engagement of any volunteer relies on his passion and indeed his love for what he's doing. But I think that the volunteer spirit needs to be substantially backed by reward. And I certainly know from our experience as a Territorial Army that reward comes in the guise of financial remuneration. I take my hat off to the specials that they continually go out and give of their time freely for the organisation. And if they undergo any of the issues that we had 15, 20 years ago as territorials liaising with regulars, I'm sure that there was or potentially is a lack of agreement to interact. I think that going forward, the specials, in my opinion, should be a paid force. I think their loyalty should be rewarded, and I've always thought that, and I've always thought very highly of the specials for the fact that they do what they do. The popular belief of the Territorial Army, of course, is that they do it for the love. Well, they do it for the love, they do it for the comradeship, but at the end of the day, wives and children have to be rewarded for the time that their menfolk are away. Always a very emotive question, what drives people to do what they do. I think certainly from an army point of view, it's the comradeship, it's the ability to be put into situations in a civilian sphere that they would not normally face. It's the ability to control themselves and indeed take control of the situation. And undoubtedly, I think that is the thing that motivates a lot of territorial soldiers, and I'm sure motivates a lot of specials. And then, of course, it's the esprit de corps, which is paramount and fundamental to the British Army. It has been so for time immemorial, with the regimental structure, the company structure, the platoon structure. And indeed, from a territorial point of view, of course, the one thing that the government has frequently forgotten and lost sight of when it has looked at any of its drawdown measures is the fact that, first and foremost, the soldier is not necessarily, or the territorial soldier is not necessarily loyal to his regiment or battalion. He's actually loyal to his TA centre. And certainly in the past, a lot of the drawdown of the Territorial Army has seen losses, and large losses of soldiers, because TA centres have been closed. Now, how that works with the specials, I don't know, but certainly from our point of view, it has been a struggle over the last 15 or 20 years.